Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're looking at a modern hidden economic crisis. And I mean a crisis that doesn't just live on spreadsheets or in those sterile, super dry debates you see economists having on TV. No, this is about the American family and honestly, the staggering price of simply surviving right now. We hear the word inflation tossed around like it's just a technical term, right? A little percentage shift in some financial report. But the reality playing out in homes across the wealthiest economy on earth, it is far more visceral and man, it is far more urgent.
Picture this scene for a second. A mother is standing in a grocery store in America, holding a carton of eggs literally like it's a luxury item. Her bank account says exactly $14, her kids are waiting at home, and tonight she has to make the absolutely impossible decision of who eats first. This isn't some snapshot from a collapsing nation a century ago, guys. This is modern America, and it instantly anchors us to the true, visceral human cost of rising prices.
So, what does this all mean? When we actually redefine inflation based on the real lived experiences of poor and working class families, it is effectively psychological warfare. It attacks a person's dignity, it emotionally exhausts an entire society, and it makes survival itself a full-time job. For poor families, this isn't just an economic shift where things cost a few cents more. It fundamentally alters how parents think, how kids grow up, and whether communities can build or completely lose trust.
Section 1. The illusion versus the reality, the dual lives of modern America.
We are caught in this wildly jarring contradiction right now. On one side, we've got the illusion. Flashing screens filled with billion-dollar corporations, artificial intelligence breakthroughs, and these endless curated luxury lifestyles paraded all over social media. But on the other side, the reality is record high credit card debt and literally historic demand at food banks. And this brilliantly illustrates the danger here. It isn't just financial. When you're drowning in a culture that constantly celebrates success and excess, feeling financially poor also makes you feel emotionally and socially poor. It's this quiet, terribly isolated kind of suffering.
Section 2. The 5 root causes, systems colliding at the worst possible time.
So why is this happening? To truly wrap our heads around this, we need to zoom out to the macro level and objectively look at the mechanics of the crisis. Root cause number 1, massive money expansion. During recent economic crises, trillions of dollars were injected into the economy through stimulus programs to keep things afloat. Now, these actions absolutely prevented a total economic collapse, but they also vastly increased the amount of money circulating out there. And well, the basic rule of economics kicked in. More money chasing limited goods equals higher prices. Unfortunately, it's ordinary families who are left to absorb the shock of those higher costs at the register.
The second driver? Corporate profit culture. A lot of Americans suspect that some giant corporations didn't just react to inflation, they actively benefited from it. Large companies aggressively raised prices on basic necessities. We're talking food, medicine, transportation, and at the exact same time, they reported enormous, record-breaking profits. Because competition in a lot of industries has weakened, these giants basically dominate pricing power. It essentially traps the poorest among us, turning their basic daily survival into a profit generator for the system. Wild, right?
Driver number 3 is America's housing crisis. Housing has become this foundational nightmare that's just stripping away stability. For years now, rent has completely outpaced wages. Private investment firms are swooping in and buying up massive amounts of housing stock, creating brutal supply shortages. Add in higher interest rates and middle-class homeownership, which used to be the absolute bedrock of the American dream, now feels completely impossible for younger generations. Millions are living literally one paycheck away from homelessness.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is this staggering number, 50%. In a ton of American cities right now, families are spending over half of their total income strictly on housing. Just imagine that for a second, working full-time, giving it everything you've got, and still fearing eviction every single month. Living under that constant, severe level of threat literally rewires the human brain to operate in a state of permanent panic. Factor 4 is healthcare costs. In this country, getting sick can trigger a terrifying, totally inescapable chain reaction. Even for families who actually have insurance, the deductibles, the prescriptions, and the emergency costs are just devastating. You miss work, you lose income, you rack up debt, which causes immense stress, which in turn further damages your physical and mental health. It's a vicious cycle that just repeats endlessly.
And finally, the 5th driver, consumerism and social media. Modern America sells this incredibly powerful illusion that if you aren't constantly upgrading your lifestyle, you're somehow falling behind. Social media normalizes luxury to the point where everyday folks are comparing their real-life daily struggles against curated online perfection. This relentless digital pressure forces so many families to use credit cards and loans just to maintain appearances. It creates a silent, shame-filled psychological burden simply for trying to feel normal.
Section 3. The psychological warfare. The hidden toll on the American family.
Okay, so we've looked at the economic drivers, but now we really need to look at how these systems rewrite family life from the inside out. The hidden toll of this chronic financial stress is absolutely devastating. So the crucial point is we see increased arguments over money. Parents are forced to work multiple jobs, leading to permanent physical exhaustion. They get less time with their kids. Studies actually show this stress is strongly connected to chronic anxiety, depression, and sleep disorders. And out in the neighborhoods, as survival consumes literally all available mental energy, community trust just evaporates. Let's look at what this means for real people. Take a delivery driver in Chicago. The guy works 12 hours a day. Gas prices rise, car repairs rise, food prices rise, but his earnings, they barely budge. For him and millions of folks just like him, every single month isn't just tight. It is a relentless mathematical emergency that he simply cannot outrun.
Or consider a single mother down in Texas, working 2 jobs. Her rent goes up again. Her refrigerator is practically empty 3 days before payday. But what does she do? She wears an emotional mask, smiling in public to hold it together for her kids, but privately feeling like she's completely failing, even though she is fighting harder than she ever has in her entire life.
And it definitely doesn't spare the elderly either. For older citizens living on fixed incomes, inflation quietly and violently erodes a lifetime of hard work. The savings that used to cover groceries and medication, now they barely cover basic utilities. They're left facing their final years with fear instead of the dignity they actually earned. When you multiply those individual stories by tens of millions, you really have to ask, what does a nation risk losing?
Section 4.
What America risks losing? The cracking of a moral foundation.
You know, nations don't only weaken through external forces, they weaken psychologically first. When millions of citizens lose faith in the future, society begins unraveling. Trust completely erodes. Young adults who can't afford stability put off major milestones like getting married or buying homes. Workers feel trapped in jobs they absolutely hate just to survive. Birth rates decline. And beneath all of that, a deep, pervasive social anger just keeps growing louder. When that unspoken promise that hard work equals stability is broken, a nation experiences an extreme emotional decline and gradual destabilization.
Section 5. Pathways to Survival. Rebuilding through Resilience.
Let's move to and see how this builds a case for solutions, because despite this heavy reality, understanding the mechanics of the problem is the absolute first step to fighting it. We're going to look at the pathways to survival, starting right at the individual level. The tactics here are specific and absolutely necessary. Number 1, build emergency savings slowly. Even tiny amounts create a much-needed buffer. 2, aggressively reduce unnecessary consumer debt. 3, really educate yourself on financial literacy. 4, focus on developing additional income skills. And 5, and this is perhaps the most crucial one in such an isolated society, build local support networks. Survival is always easier when communities actually cooperate.
Now, inside the home, families have to shift their internal culture too. It starts with having honest, real conversations about money without carrying any of the shame. It means teaching kids financial discipline early on so they're prepared for the real world. And above all, it means prioritizing emotional support. Households have to realize that true resilience sometimes begins not just with financial wealth, but with fierce, unbreakable household unity.
But listen, individual grit just isn't enough. We need collective survival tactics too. As a society, we've got to outline the larger structural conversations. We have to demand affordable housing policies and fair wage growth. We need to push for real healthcare accessibility and robust mental health support. And we absolutely must advocate for protection against predatory corporate behavior. No society can remain stable if the working people who literally build it cannot afford life itself.
We have to remember that behind every sterile economic statistic on a chart is a real person, a real family, an exhausted parent staring blankly at a grocery receipt in silence. History shows us that human beings are incredibly resilient, and systems can change. But that change, it often starts with a whisper. Revolutions begin quietly, precisely at the moment when ordinary people collectively look around and finally say, you know what, this is not sustainable anymore. So, I want to leave you with this haunting, ultimate question. What happens to a society when ordinary people can no longer live with dignity? It's a question we all need to be asking right now. If this explainer resonated with you, or if rising prices have totally changed your family's future, please share your experiences in the comments below. What are you seeing happen in your own community? Subscribe to the channel, share this explainer, and help us expose these hidden realities. Because awareness is always the first step, and silence only makes the crisis grow louder. Thanks so much for joining me, and keep learning.